So heads up.
Cool. Yeah, no, I
So
was just promoting the link real quick everywhere.
yeah. So hey everyone, happy Friday. We're gonna do the intro officially in just a second, but yeah, just thought we'd get on this thing. Um, yeah, we're just talking about real work
Yeah.
versus fake work, and work is work. I mean, and I do work hard, like a good 60 plus hours a week. Which is it's not a lot, but it's a lot compared to like a 9 to 5, right? But it's not work. It's not manual labor, and or in the language of my people, manual labor.
Man,
That's an old joke, but yeah, it's so whoever if you're watching this and you have a blue collar job, salute you because someone's got to for now until the robots take over. Someone's got to do it, and we might be experiencing the last couple of generations to like experience muscle fatigue from their day job. Like,
right. Although some of it is odd that the first jobs that we're automating are the ones that are going to be replacing muscle fatigue on our clicking fingers for Photoshop and keyboards. But I would have expected the manual labor stuff to happen first. But here we are. It's all happening right around the same time.
yeah, it is kind of funny how like so far with automation and AI and all this kind of stuff, machines, it seems to just condense the number of like people involved in a specific task. Whereas instead of like a few dozen people swinging hammers, breaking up rocks, you have like a couple people driving this big thing, and they're
Hmm.
still working at it, just fewer. And then instead of like the old switchboards connecting calls and stuff, you don't have that. You just have a call center and like a couple IT guys working on that,
Yeah.
and it's just condensing it. And but it is kind of funny. I have seen some robots doing like drywall, and like it's like, oh, well, this is interesting. This is
I
very
mean,
interesting.
it's fascinating the house, the 3D printing house stuff. I mean, that is, it felt like that was going to be the future for a while. But as I understand it, I've got a buddy that's in that space, and the thing that's really taking off much faster is container home based architecture. Just because of the way that goods are moved around the world. There's a lot of places that just accumulate containers because they import more than they export, and so the cost of these things are below zero. Like they actually pay people to demolish them, and so they're saying, "Oh, well, take them off your hands and use them for architecture because they all also very good for that sort of thing." Uh, as kind of a side effect of it being built the way it is.
Yeah, I was up through can't remember where, somewhere in middle Maine, and there was some little whole storefront thing built out of some of these containers. They just like opened up the front for like glass, and then it's just storage containers. And,
Hmm.
very very trendy, and yeah, it is kind of interesting to see how this whole thing, evolves. Um, what I think will be very interesting is when you start to replace people at like the personal level. Like there are support bots that help, but support bots just aren't good. Let's just be honest. I hate them. Anytime I have to
Oh
deal
yeah,
with a support bot, I just speak to person, and then I just navigate through the elongated captcha of arguing with the bot until they get a real person. So when they
so
get to do when you can have a meeting, right? Like when if I could have a virtual Rizzn on this thing, where it just shows up and then just like, what do you think? And then it just based on the prompts.
right.
Well, see, maybe on the $1,000 infrastructure, and it can just do it. Then we're done,
Yep. Yeah, that's
which is
it.
like
So
next year.
there was a trick that you could do that I knew about, but it doesn't work anymore because people are moving to LLMs. But back when everything was
Hmm.
basically powered by Watson, you could cuss like a sailor at customer service, and it would trigger because they all used Watson for emotional analysis, like to see like what the emotional state is of the person talking to the robot. And so when it sensed you going above a certain frustration level, it would just automatically throw you to a human. And the way to trigger that frustration level gauge in the robot was just to drop the F-bomb a bunch of times in 30 seconds. And it didn't matter even what you were saying.
Yeah,
Just,
so the Irish got excellent customer service, as well
exactly.
as the East Coast U.S. people, like from Boston, just instant.
Instant human. Yeah.
You know, it's fun stuff. All right, let's hit on the intro thing and then roll into the news and stuff.
So
So, hey everyone, happy Friday. Officially, welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown. This is episode 148. 148 weeks is a lot of weeks. I'm joined by the one and only Rizzn, Rizzn Hopkins. How's it going, man?
it's going pretty good. How about you?
It's pretty good. Saw you already had some showtime earlier today, so hopefully that warmed you up rather than spending all the insight to where you now have no more.
I had I consumed it all. I had a giant Starbucks triple venti. So I have got enough energy for at least another show or two.
Yeah, that's for sure. I just got my own double shot here, but as I have told a few people, I don't know who, can't remember, but the coffee shop local to me has this item called the Screamin' Demon, which is 4 shots of espresso over concentrated cold brew, and it comes in this like glass tiki like mug like that. And so I have had that a few times, and it has given me mild hallucinations. So if you need just where you start to like, you know, kind of like when you stare into the sun too quickly and turn away, you're just like,
Right, yeah, you get little tracers
going on?
going.
Yeah. So I haven't had that in a while. I haven't needed to. I'm a little bit more relegated, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so we're going to have a fun show. Let's, before we jump into everything, I gotta do the CoinATMRadar thing, because they quite generously hit me up out of the blue last year and were like, hey, can we throw you a bag? We're probably not going to get any ROI on it, but we like your ethos. And I'm like, all right, well, if you do me that favor, I do you that favor. And for the first time ever, I've actually gotten the read out of the email where we discussed it, and it's actually on a separate thing. So I'm actually prepared this time.
Great.
So this podcast is sponsored by CoinATMRadar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And it's kind of ominous that I'm talking to you, Mark, about this at this point, because, yeah, it's true. And unlike an exchange which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With CoinATMRadar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, you can search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying. And you can also search by geo area, like country, state, city, etc. You can also check and compare actual current fees from different ATMs. To find out more, go to coinatmradar.com or coinatmradar.com, unless I put an extra A in there accidentally. But yeah, so definitely it is kind of funny. The small tangent thing is a lot of people, especially with this whole Monero delisting thing we're right about to talk about, have been saying like, no, we don't need exchanges anyway. Just buy peer-to-peer. That's just the way to go. And philosophically, I think that that's excellent, but there's always some complexities. So,
Oh yeah, we can definitely get into that today.
let's just roll right into that. So,
Yeah.
something you sent me for a material, but since I tweeted it, sure, I might as well read it. But anyway, Monero dumped significantly upon the news of getting delisted from Binance, and this was honestly, as soon as it came out, I just like threw out the first things that came to my brain. I didn't really think through it too heavily, but it did pretty well. So there you go. But basically, just said that this is not good, but it's kind of an inevitable progression, and then also Monero's probably going to be fine after all this. And why don't you give me your hot take before I flip to the other tab?
Well, I mean, so this is just kind of like all a part of the Choke Point 2.0 campaign that's been ongoing for a number of years, of which I was also a lucky recipient of being a sample martyr for the cause. But the
New Twitter bio, by the way. Sample martyr for the cause.
sample, yeah, I got to change that out. I think it says imprisoned for BTCing too hard, but I think the other one sounds better now.
I mean, they're both
The one thing that I think is that I saw, it was the other link that I gave you on this topic, the Millie tweet, noted that this is almost certainly due to the fact that the feds have now unfettered access to Binance, and I think that's probably why we're seeing it now, because Monero has been listed and delisted a dozen times, and really it's kind of settled down since then. I think Binance already kind of had it on a. Were they allowing withdrawals? Because last time I checked with Binance, now Binance hasn't been able to be accessible from Texas in quite a while because they screen us at the VP unless you're using a VPN at the state level. But last time I was on Binance, you could buy it and you could sell it, but you couldn't withdraw it. So it's already kind of been in a weird state of usage for Binance anyway. It wasn't really a primary place to get it from.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could withdraw it. I do remember like a year ago or so, them doing a big proof of keys type event where everyone withdrew. And there was always disruptions with withdrawals, but I think it was permitted. And I think when they announced the delisting officially, like not well, we think we're going to do it, which they did like a few weeks ago or whatever. When they finally did this week, they said it's going to be gone. They did stop withdrawals, but as far as I know, they're back on. So I think it's just exchange shenanigans. But yeah, I mean, this, as I put up on the screen with this Millex tweet, or I'm assuming it's Millex because it's just a bunch of freaking weird symbols, and I have an easy enough username. Anyway, right. The part of the deal with CZ included a cause to allow feds unadulterated access to Binance operations for 4 years. The days of Binance autonomy are ending, to be honest. Yeah, I can't disagree with that at all, because Binance was known as just ground zero for the shitcoin casino forever. And eventually it's like, if you're not a crypto unless you're on Binance, and you are a crypto but not much else if you are on Binance. Like, that's kind of like the barrier, the bus, like the barrier to entry right there. And now they can't do what they want anymore. Now they have to comply with more than just laws. They have to comply with whims of the federal authorities, which are separate from legal sanctions, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah, then get rid of Monero, I guess, right?
Well, this feels like, I mean, it's obviously consequential of a story for Monero, at least in the short term. I think Monero has a lot of culture and ability to bounce back from this. Binance isn't, at the end of the day, the only centralized exchange in the world. And so but this to me felt more like a Binance story than a Monero story, looked at from the long view. Like this kind of signals what we may view as like the turning point in the decline of Binance, right? Like, obviously the impetus is the CZ case, but this is like a symptom of where things are going to be headed. It's, hey guys, this is not a friendly place for, degenerate behavior anymore. There's adults watching this exchange now.
Yeah, I definitely think it's what I would call the end of Binance in what Binance was before. It's definitely dead. Yeah. And it's also the early warning shot end of the centralized exchange, kind of, where it doesn't mean that like there won't be any, but obviously, like, so if you go back to the early days, which I was part of some of them, but you were part of the ones even earlier, where there weren't exchanges. There just were no exchanges at one point. Right. And then there was just Mt. Gox. And when Mt. Gox went down, everyone, that was huge. Had a lot of ripples across the ecosystem. But Mt. Gox kind of started the era of the centralized exchange. They got to the Mt. Gox, Coinbase, Binance, and then just some of the titans of industry, the Poloniex Trollbox, all that kind of stuff, like just all the. But it was like, that was literally what crypto was people playing around with stuff on the side, but crypto was the exchange, the centralized exchange. And a lot of these exchanges in weird jurisdictions especially were just like crypto only, no KYC, just throw your crypto coins, swap over anywhere. That era is over. Maybe not over, but it's on the way out.
Yeah, I would say like it's so like the yes and no, right? Like so if you want, so what happened was just like OG perspective, like the gray in my beard is real type answer. So there was like a couple of other, like right around the time Gox popped up, there was like Liberty X and a couple of other like exchanges that didn't last very long that had an API and you could degen on. And then there was the big Gox hack, and then I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was something like it was like CEX or something. There was a big exchange that was like ultimate degen. I can't remember the name of it. Basically, it turned out that it was completely created by the guys that hacked Empty Gox because they were using it to launder all the funds out. There was so many Bitcoin that were stolen from Gox that they had to create an exchange to launder it out. And the guys were eventually caught like 9 years later. But like that particular thing, and this was all pre-KYC days, that particular exchange kind of spawned a lot of what you called Binance was like the shitcoin casinos that have existed since then, that were like the best example of one I could say right now is MEXC, right? Which also like maybe the last week or the week before, there was a bunch of people claiming that they were not able to pull their coins out, and there was some shenanigans going on the side. So basically, these are always going to exist. They're going to pop up in these weird jurisdictions where they think they don't have to comply with American KYC laws. They will exist for a while to allow people to play their shitcoin casino games, and then they will either rug or they will get shut down. Those are never going to go away, but you'll never see another Binance emerge out of them. That's that's the distinction here. Like you'll never see one, like, because like Coinbase was like, I would say the first one that was launched that wasn't launched out of like the shitcoin casino mindset. They were trying to be serious, and it shows in the culture and what they're trying to do, even though they do engage in a lot of the same activities that maybe Binance does. But like Binance was one of these degen centralized exchanges that tried to kind of go legit, and you can see that just is not working out for them. I don't think it will ever work out for anybody ever again. That will affect that will affect the market. I mean, to put it plainly, you won't be able to see people easily raise venture capital for an exchange ever again. Unless they are strictly going through this like KYC Gemini Coinbase type model. But you will still see like gray money, dark money go in to fund centralized exchanges to create these casino atmospheres that come and go, I think.
Yeah, I just think fewer of them will be fully centralized infrastructure. I think that one thing I have noticed casually is the explosion over the last few years of like 5 years, let's say, of like swap services, of little swap aggregators that, bounce between different, exchanges and things like that. And now a lot of those are using DEX rails, like obviously the whole EVM, AMM world, but then also you got Thorchain, Maya Protocol, Chainflip is now part of the mix, maybe Sarai DEX soon, but like you have all these other DEX rails coming in there. And it seems like the casino world is more in the DEX or DEX in name only kind of world. And there's also something I've been noticing, a lot of, I guess, DeFi platforms or, DEX aggregators are having a fiat on-ramp component. So the whole DEX trading stuff is obviously, the whole thing's non-custodial, but the whole DEX trading stuff is obviously no KYC, etc. And it's only like when you have to actually dip into the fiat world there. And some of them have, like Thor Wallet is one of my favorite examples of this, because they have a few different fiat on-ramps. They also have like a debit card and stuff, like all like the whole like Coinbase suite of things, but all on a non-custodial wallet that if you want to send, receive, and swap, you don't need to touch into KYC at all for that. So there's that. Then there's also the new, I don't know if it's a new entrant, but a major entrant is the, I guess the super regulated neobank type things, like the Cash Apps, the PayPals, Revolut is another one, like those ones. And I was chatting with one of them recently, and they don't even talk about crypto. They can't talk about crypto at all. They support it, but they can't, like, let's just say PayPal can't be like, did you know, Litecoin, the oldest, blah, blah, blah. They can't say it. No, they're nothing. Whereas Binance could just say whatever they want. Coinbase talks about stuff. And so it seems like it used to be this, like, everything was a centralized exchange. Now it's like kicking down to centralized front end of DEX or full DEX, or kicking upward into super regulated neobank or, ETF fund kind of thing. Seems like the space occupied by the centralized exchange is just being like split up and down. Oop, I think you got all muted there for a second or something. Maybe hit the cough button, BTC too hard, hit the cough button too hard. Unless my headphones died for some reason. Let me just make sure I could hear stuff. I seem to remember something like this happened before when we were on a few months ago. Can't remember. Yeah, everyone should hear that. So my sound's working fine. It's working fine in the little container that you're in. So it must be your microphone that just cut out or something, or got switched off in some way. But anyway, let me just make sure I'm not annoying the rest of the people with too much anything. But anyway, feel free, by the way, if you want to just leave and come back and see if that solves things. Let me just switch to switch to like a little waiting screen. People can still hear me talking, by the way. I'm just switch to a waiting screen. Why don't you just like refresh the thing, go back in and out, and see if you have any help with that. But yeah, as I was mentioning with the centralized exchange kind of wrapper and stuff, it's definitely segmenting into different worlds, and I think that we're going to see an interesting bifurcation of the asset classes, right? Where you in the beginning have you have like the super regulated exchange coins, and then there's some other ones that might be like a second tier. But then also, I think you're going to start to have ones that are just like, if you're not in that world, you just got nothing. Like, you don't exist. That'll be kind of funny to see. And the thing is, I don't know how long we're going to have Monero in the mix for kind of these larger platforms, for the more regulated centralized exchange platforms. It might not hang out there for a while, but I think that it could be the king of the underworld, where you have the DEX. The thing about Monero that has been a limitation, I guess, is technologically it seems much more difficult to integrate into services. And so because of that, it's full-on DEX integration, I guess, spread might be lacking a little bit. And I know that's obviously a massive priority for the community at this point, and rightly so. It should be. And pretty soon, I think we're going to see a lot more DEX integrations. Once that happens, though, you can definitely see Monero be, again, the king of the underworld. The underground experience is just like, oh, if you see Monero, the icon show up on a platform you're at or whatever, it's like a symbol that, oh, it's only in this world here. It's not the the major world. It's not the, it's not the regular fiat kind of world. And so that might be like, I guess I can foresee a switch to like a switch from like where crypto right now is a lot more, I guess, homogenous, but to be like an institutional cryptos where it's like the boomer coins, the Bitcoins or the Litecoins and Ethereums or whatever are in funds. You might have those, but then you might also have you have those, but then you also have like the underworld kind of ones where it's just all the rest of the cryptos are somewhere else. Okay. All right. Well, let me get a new Brave Talk link for Mark here to get him to rejoin. As always, we have to admit, in all this, it's going to be consistently superior to X Spaces or Twitter Spaces, because those things always have bugs. Every single time there was like 40, maybe 50% of them have some kind of an issue, and it's just so annoying. But yeah, nice little monologue I'm able to have here with just the logo spinning around, which is fun. But we do hope we get Mark back in here pretty soon. But yeah, so as far as we did have an interesting space on the, I guess, @_community or the digital cash X handle on Thursday, which is yesterday, about the whole, is the delisting good or is it bad, or something else. And a lot of the consensus seems to be that reliance on these exchanges has gotten way out of hand, where the entire crypto ecosystem relies very heavily on having these kinds of large exchange platforms, and then a lot of trading volume, i.e., what pays the bills, comes from those traders on these platforms. And so then it's like a lot of projects then atrophy a little bit because they focus way too much on exchange integrations, on being on these platforms, being on these exchanges, and getting a lot of speculative trading value, but not very much on, there we go, hello, not very much on kind of other things like true peer-to-peer type stuff. Still no mic access. Interesting. Well, welcome to the world of tech at this point, but I'm sure you guys are having a lot of fun with the talking head thing here. I'm gonna try a couple other things. So yeah, bear with me for just a little bit as I kind of get this thing figured out to see. Try, and it's going to be funny to see if people recognize some of these sounds. Go into Google Meet. Ooh, let's see if this works. As you can, I'm sure, hear a big long thing. Anyway, back on with the rants. So, yeah, a lot of times these exchanges are what set the prices. And I do remember in the early days of Bitcoin, people not only just trading Bitcoin, but for goods and services, but pricing things in Bitcoin. And obviously there were more real, I guess, or official, official pricing mechanisms from exchanges and stuff, but I do remember a few sites in particular either paying people or selling goods or services for Bitcoin and keeping the prices in play for a certain period of time, like a few months even. So not the daily volatility where it's just like, oh, this is the same. It costs 0.5 Bitcoin for this always. It's like, okay, well, that's good. That makes things a whole lot, simpler. But then over time, then it just became very much into, current exchange rates, things like that, like, all that fun stuff. And I think that over time, we're going to have to start migrating towards more. There's only two ways, right? You can either build out a fully kind of peer-to-peer electronic cash ecosystem and just grow from the ground up, or you can go full on into the top down kind of thing where you're trying to get in all the legacy institutions and build your own. And that's where you kind of get, that's kind of where you draw everything from. So yeah, there's like a couple of ways this could go. I mean, obviously Monero is obviously Monero is kind of positioned for that other one. So, all right, one moment. Let me just hit this. Let me just hit the waiting sound as well as I get this thing figured out. One moment. Hear that. So I think we're probably back, by the way, guys. Anyway, as I gotta sort of continue that rant while Mark fiddles with these settings, but we should be able to hear him just fine. Let's see, where were we? It was on the kind of bifurcation of the DEX world into, or the crypto world into like the institutional level of things, and where you have like the institutionally supported assets, things like that, all the way down to then maybe an underworld kind of thing where before just like the Binance and the other casino exchanges were the underworld, but now it seems like it's just like the network of peer-to-peer dexes and stuff is kind of where maybe something like Monero might end up completely. One moment. All right.
All right, you able to hear me?
Yeah. Do we need the both people in there?
I'm sending audio through one and video through the other.
Okay. Let me temporarily here, let me switch to the, gotta do a little magic stuff here. Let me temporarily move the camera thing around. One moment. Stream. Just so people, to make sure people can all see everything okay. So this one, yeah. So for everyone else watching, sorry for the temporary disruptions, but hope you guys are having a good day. It's been yeah, what can I say? A crazy week of a lot of crazy things, and I'm kind of looking forward to the whole delisting talk of being something, in the background, right?
In the rearview mirror.
Yeah, in the rearview mirror. All right, let me try this regular stream. All right, so now people, this temporary hack. People can see a little bit better, but we'll just write it out like this. I don't know how much of all the rambling of the last few minutes you caught, but basically, just talking about just continuing on that whole thing. Now, do you think Monero? Do you think there's going to be a kind of an institutional level of crypto players, like, as I mentioned, like the neobanks and then the funds and all that kind of stuff, and there's a certain subset of coins you'll see there, and then Monero's not going to be one of them. And then when you start dipping into another part of the world, then all of a sudden it's like the DEX world. You see just the underground. You see, it's almost like when you see that little orange, red, black, whatever Monero logo, it's almost like, oh, we're off-roading here. Like this is,
Yeah.
that's just kind of a sign of that.
Well, I mean, I've always had the feeling this is gonna be like a horses for courses type situation. Like, I mean, not every crypto is good for every application. That's kind of the point, That's kind of the point of what we're building here. I think you can see evidence of the future that you allude to in that question. And, someone pointed out to me recently that the prevalence of Tether in Southeast Asia and
Latin America,
South America, not on the EVM, but on the Tron network, because of the way the fee structures work. And that is what's driving Tether adoption in non-American and European influenced crypto markets, is the fact that it is a great substitute for failing currencies and international usage. Like I was doing some work in consulting a couple of years ago, and a little bit at the beginning of this year with some agencies that were based in Korea and based in the Philippines and parts of China. And all of them are asking me for my Tron address, and I'm like digging deep trying to figure out if I've even got one that's connected to a mnemonic that I use regularly, and that, because that's just their SOP. And I'm giving them advice based on, well, I think you should be developing this application for the EVM or something like that. They're like, no, Tron, we want to do Tron because that's what everybody uses here. And I'm like, oh, okay. That is what it is. But I think it's going to be the same thing with like Monero and privacy coins. Is you're going to see those coins that aren't like, you'll see if privacy is the primary feature of the coin, right, and it's not remittance or store of value or something else. Coins that like Zcash and Dash that have user bases outside of just people trying to use the coin for privacy, I think have a brighter future. Monero's entire brand is, the dark market loves us, and you've got privacy by default. I think privacy by default coins, and that being their entire identity, those are going to be, as you say, like off-road coins. Those are going to be coins that are not going to be accepted by this new TradFi crypto loving world that we're in.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. But also, it's going to be fun to see. Like, I think that the segmentation of which coins are used in which contexts is going to continue. And ironically, it's going to matter almost less over time because, I'm not going to throw it up on the screen right now, but as a test, I went to Rango Exchange and then looked at their how cheaply could they send 5 Dash, which is like $136 about, and turn it into Tether on Tron through Dex rails. And I'd get 128 Tether on Tron from that, which is actually a lot better than I thought I would get, right? And so, and that it actually shows the routes, and it has like a few different options here. And this is like the main route here, right? It would be dash using the Maya protocol, dash to Rune, Thorchain. Using Thorchain would be Rune to USDC on Binance Smart Chain, and then through Synapse Swapper to Tether on Binance Smart Chain, and then Allbridge Core from Tether on Binance Smart Chain to Tron. All these steps with relatively little cost, all things considered. But just the thing is, like, first off, that's insanely complicated, but it is also under the hood for the most part. And so yeah. I think it really matters with cost and latency. Like if you're paying every single merchant and you're going through this nonsense, that's just not going to work, right? It's just not going to work. But if it's just like, oh, we can pay your salary in only Tether on Tron, that's all we got. And you're like, all right, well, all the merchants in my area take Dash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just swap a bag to Dash every week or so for spending money, and then it's just fine. And it's just like, oh, this coin got delisted. Oh, this is Monero, just Monero only country, you know? And then, okay, so they only pay you in Monero. It's like, I want some USDC on Avalanche. And then, you know, once you get Monero on something like Sarai Dex or whatever, then beep, you can just kind of go in there. But there will probably be whole segments of the crypto world that won't even know other coins exist, because they'll be like, everything I do is just this. And like, you're telling me there's other coins out there? That's crazy.
Well, I mean, it's and this kind of gets away from where we're talking, like the world we're talking about, but it's related thematically. Is what, when I was doing a lot of ICOs in 2017 to 2019 era, what ended up happening for a lot of like because everybody wanted to create a token for their ICO, just basically they wanted to have a like the blockchain halo on their Web2 application. And so the conversation would always go like down these stepping stones. They go, okay, well, I want to do an ICO because I want money and I don't want to talk to VCs or venture or PE firms. Like, okay, great. Well, we can help you. Right. So then we do that. So what do we do? Well, you're going to have a marketplace, right? Some kind of Web2 based marketplace. Well, why don't you make it a Web2 marketplace with a token on it, and you can use the token for transaction on your marketplace that you've created. Okay, great. Well, our user feedback is they don't understand. Like my product is called XYZ marketplace, and they don't know what XYZ coin is. Like they see the token on there in their dashboard, and they don't understand how to buy it, how to manage it. And so why don't we just represent that in the USD equivalent of XYZ coin? And then, it'll float back and forth. Okay, great. We can do that. Okay. And then the next step would obviously be, well, now they're upset because the USD equivalent value fluctuates from day to day. Like one day it's $5, the next day it's $15, and then the day after that it's like $3. So how about we let them store USD, in some sort of stable coin, and then they can just convert it to our governance token whenever they want to use it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So you end up getting all these levels of disintermediation to the point where the dollar value just ends up being kind of like a construct that you think in, as opposed to an actual derivative of the dollar, right? And what we're talking about at this point is kind of what we experienced in the United States in kind of the westward expansion era, which is the balkanization or the federation of value. And there will be entire segments of the internet that might think in terms of, did they denominate the value in Monero because that's what they deal with every day, and then there'll be entire segments of the internet that denominate the value in TUSD, Tether on Tron, because that's what they deal with day to day, and Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the other major currencies. It's just kind of what do you deal with on a daily basis that's how you're going to denominate value in your head. And it's all an abstraction because what's underlying it just is going to depend upon what part of the internet you've navigated to.
Yeah, this could be a wild world for sure. Um, it's kind of funny because
It comes back to the whole thing that we always talk about, which UXs have to evolve, right? It's all about the UX. What goes underneath the hood isn't going to matter.
yeah, if you can create a good UX and then the underlying chain only matters insofar as it can enable the UX you want. So, like for example, when playing around with these roots on Rango for various assets, it's like, okay, well then now you got one that's, now I lost like 30% of my trade because I had to dip through the ETH L1 to get there. And it's just like, okay, people are not going to do that then. And it's just like, do you have a route through Arbitrum? Do you have a route through whatever? And Solana, for example, and then you don't have those issues nearly as much. Then that's when things are going to start to matter. And I think that Bitcoin is the one that's sort of grandfathered in to, I guess, not having to deal with that to a certain extent. There's a certain, and I don't exactly know how I feel about this because, obviously I use crypto and I like my crypto to be usable, et cetera, et cetera. And the Bitcoin experience is not nearly the best these days. And there is the free market too. But it seems like because so many funds and things like that are just like, oh, we're going to store some Bitcoin or whatever, people are willing to put up with like some crap just because of Bitcoin. Whereas with Ethereum and Ethereum's children and all the other cryptos, basically, it seems to be a lot more unforgiving about the actual experience and like the fees of stuff. So people might still, have a certain amount of like hesitancy to use Bitcoin, but also they might have it and then that's just what they just accept that as the price of doing business is we all have to have Bitcoin, and then you pay the nasty fees to get out to other things, which I hope isn't the case. And I hope, honestly, centralized exchanges and funds, like I have seen Bitcoiners unironically, not even joking around, claiming that the ETFs were scaling solutions for Bitcoin, which it's super.
I don't totally disagree with that
exactly.
but it's like
it's revolting. It's revolting, but it's true.
I don't know that I go around saying it. It may be technically correct, but I don't know if it's the right way to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So all these like if Bitcoin is scaling on centralized rails, then centralized rails don't interact with the rest of the space. The only way Bitcoin can interact with the rest of the space is by touching that dirty, nasty layer 1 and just getting destroyed in the fees. So I think that there's going to be a market, like an arms race, as it were, to who can wrap Bitcoin the best, who can do a trustworthy wrapped Bitcoin token of Bitcoin or whatever, so you can deal with all that stuff. And who knows, it might be like, let's just say a Thorchain synthetic for BTC. That might be one thing that wins out. It might be whatever else. Who knows? But then that thing's going to be a hot commodity because you can go in and out of Bitcoin and other things without having to deal with the main chain. And I think that too many, like everyone, like the competition for L2s for Ethereum is just off the charts. Everyone wants to do that. Only Bitcoin people seem to want to do Bitcoin L2s, which I think is just a massive missed opportunity. Like, just don't you see where it's going? It's getting institutionalized to this level. Don't you see how awful their solutions are? Can't you get a piece of that? And unfortunately, it's just like the maxi elements would just like yell at it and stuff. But like at the same time, I think the maxis have started to give up on Lightning as a whole. Maybe not entirely, but they're not as like uber bullish anymore. And they're starting to deal with federated liquid, which is not Bitcoin at all. And so if they're going to do that, they might as well do some EVM based one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the dominant the dominant. I don't know. This is unsupported by any research because there's obviously you can quantify this, but it feels like to me in my world the dominant L2 for Bitcoin is the EVM because of
Mm-hmm.
WBTC and a group that I've had some interaction with recently. We talked about before the show does characterize WBTC as decentralization theater because it's all custodied by one organization, but that's going to change over time, just in the way that there's a lot of experimentation between, you know, DAI and then like some of the actually truly decentralized alternatives that don't rely on USDC. Launched something this week that I forget the name of. I think it's HAI or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's looks really promising in that respect. There's just a lot of innovation happening with true decentralization, so that I and it all seems to be happening in EVM derivative ecosystems, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily Ethereum directly, but Arbitrum or Optimism or other places. That I think that we're going to see a good decentralized Bitcoin derivative alternative probably over in the EVM ecosystem way before we see a good one that we all feel comfortable with in the Bitcoin one. And a lot of people that know me are going to hate that I just said that, but it's my true opinion.
Yeah, it's probably is going to be that first, and maybe Solana or something. I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about where Solana is
Yeah.
going, but
There's a
because
shiver go down my spine when you say that.
yeah, because at the one hand, Solana kind of became famous for being horrendously centralized and breaking 8 times, and then it pushed very high throughput, records, and as of like a couple weeks ago was looking to be like the comeback kid, and then it crapped out again, and that doesn't erase that, but I don't know, it's remains to be seen kind of thing. Well, so speaking on the exchange stuff, we should touch on the KYC thing, because that's interesting. So this article inside the underground site where neural networks churn out fake IDs, and just shows all this like
Yeah.
this fake ID thing. Anyway, so basically, an underground website called Only Fake, kind of funny play on words there, right? Is claiming to use neural networks to generate realistic-looking photos of fake IDs for just $15, radically disrupting the marketplace for fake identities and cybersecurity more generally. Yeah. So the verified produced fake IDs nearly instantly could streamline everything from bank fraud to laundering stolen funds. Yeah, I mean, this is what the kids would call surprised Pikachu face. Like, oh, this wasn't gonna happen. So before I run my mouth, what's your hot take on this?
Well, I think my hot take on it was that this was only shocking, like you said, the Pikachu face, only shocking to people because I should back up and say the headline that was on the Tech Meme and the 404
Mm-hmm.
article was that they were able to set up an OKX exchange account using this fake
Yeah.
ID within minutes, and that to me is only shocking to people who've never tried to set up an account on OKX, which will basically let you set up an account with a picture of your dog if you so choose. It's not really known for their stringent KYC policy. However, what sites are known for their stringent KYC policy is any network that uses Plaid, which is, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of the
Everything.
neobanks, Cash App, Coinbase, like all the real exchanges, centralized exchanges where activity is being constrained to, basically use the Plaid network for KYC with very few exceptions. And anybody that's used any of those sites know that you have to you hold up your ID here and it makes you do this number with your face and it scans your face. So this doesn't solve that problem. This doesn't streamline that problem. This fake ID generated by a neural network does not solve the problem of if you get pulled over and you have this, really nicely created, even with the holographic strip ID that you hand to the police officer. As soon as he runs it through the computer, he's going to know that McLovin is not a real person, that your real name is something other than McLovin. So
In all likelihood.
In all likelihood, I mean, there is one McLovin that we know of, so maybe it is. But so the idea there is that, well, and this we got into a deep discussion about this on the show earlier today. It was pointed out that the place to go get IDs on any dark net, on a dark web website is usually with that ID guy, and he's got that he's squatted that name on every one of the dark web websites. He's known for being able to put out quality stuff that will pass a law enforcement check if you use a real ID, like you use a real name that exists, which you can also buy from most of those same dark web websites for about $5. Something that has been stolen or from a leaked database or something like that. So,
leaked database, you stuttered. They're all leaked at this point.
Yes. But the point there being is that I think the story, once again, mainstream media has gotten this story wrong. It's not shocking to me that you're able to create these things with neural networks. It's not shocking to me that you can find fake IDs or stolen IDs on the dark web, or that there's a guy out there that can do it for almost as cheaply as you can do it with a neural network. What should be shocking to the most people listening to this and reading that story is that how brittle and facile our Western standards for identification are, how ineffective KYC is at actually doing what you could already do this for about $10, maybe $20 more than what this neural network could do, and probably more effectively. It's just that now we've got a nice flashy headline that says, oh, AI can do it, and now everyone's going to start paying attention. There is no easy fix to this. This vulnerability already existed before AI. That much we know because of the massive amount of fraud that takes place, not just through crypto, but through traditional payment rails.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way.
I mean, it was another story that's very much related to this problem that came out this week is the revelation that Iran evaded sanctions to the tune of billions of dollars, not through using Bitcoin, not through using AI generated fake IDs, but through their bank accounts at Lloyd's of London and Santander. I mean, the blockchain is an improvement upon the traditional finance system. That to me, it allows people to be not criminal evaders, but have the amount of privacy that they believe they ought to have based upon what it is they're trying to do, as opposed to the traditional finance system, which is a murky, dark hole of people getting bribed to do whatever you're allowed to do with however much money you have in your bribe.
Yeah, and that is kind of, I sort of dipped my toes into that world a little bit through exploring like personal privacy. And of course, I follow a lot of the stuff that Naomi Brockwell talks about for personal privacy. And I mean, crypto is so much more transparent, right? Because if you want financial privacy with fiat, you have to use cash, which is one way, and it's increasingly going away, but still there. But then also you can use something like privacy.com to generate single-use credit card numbers to just keep on kind of doing that. And then it's like the accountability of something like that. I mean, it's a legit company as far as I know, but the point is the fact that you could kind of get that done, that's just so much different. And then I don't like to have I don't know my phone number, right? I don't even know it. I've never used it because I don't want to get SIM swapped, right? So I just only use VoIP numbers. And there are some services that just want a phone number for semi-ID purposes, right? Just to make sure that's how they know you're not a bot somehow, is you have a phone number, whatever. And if they don't have, if they don't let you do a VoIP number, I do have some services that will take crypto that will let you use a real non-VoIP number for like a single use for like 50 cents. You just send 50 cents of crypto and boom, there you go. And it's just like the old way of doing things. It's more like an idiot test than anything else. It's more, to a certain extent, it's an idiot test, but then to the other extent, it's an innocence dragnet where you're trying to collect all the data from people who would never be a threat to the regime or anything, but you just want, under the auspices of catching the bad guys, who, if they're any smart, you're not going to get them. you just collect all this information from people. And so the thing about KYC and people who I know who, like for example, Bruce Fenton, who's been involved in traditional finance long before he's been involved in crypto, remembers a time before KYC, like when they introduced KYC with stuff and people saying, "Oh, this is crazy." And I think KYC is a big pain, but it's not until now, it's not a big enough pain that people will just say, "Look, I'm not doing that." People will be like, "All right, fine, I'll get my little ID, I'll take a selfie with it, and then wait, and then okay, I got a bank account, that's fine." But now that we have this like super easy to game system, it's gaining, which again, as you pointed out, it's not new, it's been around, but the point is, it's getting maybe more efficient and also more press. At some point, they're going to ratchet up the annoyance on the KYC side to where they're going to break it. They're going to twist it so hard that it's going to break, and people are going to be like, "No, this is too much. I'm going back to cash. I'm doing whatever. I'm going to actually pick it." You mean I can't buy something for 10 grand without the IRS being reported with cash? Like, what the hell? Like, people don't even know this because they don't use cash, but then they will use cash. Be like, "Hey, I'm going to buy a cheap car." Let's be honest, 10K is not that much for a car these days. I'm going to buy a cheap car for my daughter in cash because, I have some issue with this bank thingy, and I don't know, whatever. Here, I'll just give my daughter a stack of cash instead of having her set up this annoying fucking account. And then all of a sudden she gets flagged for trying to buy a car. It's just like, what the hell is it? You mean this is legal? And then you start picketing. Then you start showing up to congressional testimony things, and then you start then it goes there. How do you think that's going to shake out?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're in this like age of overreaction. We've been tracking this show on a couple of the podcasts that I come on a lot. The things that were very disturbing with regard to KYC overreaction stem from the Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden kind of driven policy initiatives. One of them that was really, I think, is going to cause this crackback that you're talking about, is the beneficiary reporting rules for corporations in the United States. It creates an onerous requirement. So for those that are familiar with me and know my story, they may recall that I went to prison because I didn't fill out a piece of paper with a little known organization called FinCEN that said I was selling Bitcoin above a certain amount. Right. So that requirement that I didn't comply with, that sent me to prison for was a sentence of 15 months, is now been extended to anybody who's ever registered or been named as a beneficial owner of a corporation. 100% of all people who've ever filed a corporation now have to, with FinCEN, file a piece of paper within, I think it's within 6 weeks of any information being updated or changing. So like if you have to file it, everybody has to file it now. If it changes and you don't file it, you're out of compliance within 6 weeks, which currently there's only civil penalties, but that's how that's how FinCEN starts. If you don't comply with the civil penalties, you don't pay your fines, there could be potentially criminal penalties. We are manufacturing at record rate KYC felons, and it's real easy to and I know this because I've had friends that have walked away from me after my ordeal. It's real easy to go, "Oh well, Mark, you probably should have known that this lady was a little bit shady. Oh, Mark, you should have known. You should have done your research and known that you were supposed to file this piece of paper with FinCEN. That was stupid of you." I had people say that to me, and maybe they're right. Well, we're going to see the same thing start to happen with people who have an LLC that's just there, that they keep up to date, but they don't really do anything with, but they didn't file their beneficial ownership paperwork, and they're going to fall afoul of some U.S. attorney, and the U.S. attorney is going to go, "Well, we can't get you on the thing that we want to get you for, but we're going to get you for not filing this piece of paper," and they're going to be sentenced to prison. You're going to see a lot more people going to prison for things that weren't even crimes a year ago. Yeah. And that's going to cause the clapback.
Yeah, and that's exactly similar to my childhood growing up in Mexico, where the system is, I don't know what it's like today. I can't imagine it's that much better, but it was the same thing where there's a bunch of laws on the books. Like, for example, you can legally own a firearm on your premises to a certain extent, but it's criminal to travel with it. And so then it's kind of a catch-22 of like, a farmer can have a shotgun, but how do they get the shotgun? There's no legal way to get the shotgun. And so literally there's always this kind of situation, or for example, when importing things, everything is, again, you can't import anything, and then unless you bribe the border guards, and then you can import anything you want. But then,
right.
There's this weird situation, and not to dip too far into politics, but just recently with the announcement that the sitting president of the U.S. has had some document leaks that the former president, they throw the book at for, but then this president is not being prosecuted because he's allegedly senile. That was the justification, but he's still the sitting president, which should not be the case. If he's senile, it should be the vice president come in. We're starting to get this weird situation where I don't think the legally right thing, whatever, I don't think that legal and right are the same thing at all, but I'm just saying, if you believe the legal thing is the right thing, I don't think that's going to happen in this case, whatever that might be. Whichever path you want to take, I don't think that's going to happen. Then we get into this weird situation. The problem is most Americans, I think, are in this fantasy world of thinking that the justice system is just at the top. Oh yeah, there's all like the bad apples, but it's good. And so if you run afoul, if you're a felon, you won't hire the person, for example. That just everyone kind of says, well, I get that there's outliers, but aren't there like defense funds and nonprofits to deal with that? And like, it should be expunged. As soon as the governor of this state knows, they'll pardon them and expunge it. Like, no, it's not true at all. And people are waking up to it slowly. And so the whole like KYC scam thing, I think that the vast majority of innocent people who get convicted of financial crimes of one way or another, are fringe people. They're involved in fringe activities that it's easy for the average person to just dismiss and be like, all right, well, that guy was he was doing some strange stuff. And even though I know he's a nice guy and he means well, it's risky, but it's not a problem for me because I just have a company, and when that changes, it's going to be something else. But
yeah,
in the meantime, KYC is useless. It doesn't work. And now with the free-flowing exchange of information that, AI search engine stuff has made so easy, and the generation of, like, you used to have to, like, know Photoshop to make fake images. Now you just hit a button and you generate a new fake face. And just now, at this point, I think it's going to push, and we're either going to get some sort of a super draconian national ID type system, or global ID, or each nation has its own type thing. Either we're moving in that direction, or we're moving in a direction of something else better and freer, and it's going to be really hard to make sure it's going to be the latter rather than the former.
And again, it's hard to talk about. I mean, but this has been the subject of what I've been talking about for years when I do my speeches on crypto and Bitcoin, is that it is an inherently political concept. But this also starts to get tied into the really political hot button issue that of immigration going on right now. There's a whole debate happening about what may or may not be happening at the southern border. Should Texas be able to patrol its borders, or is that the job of the federal government? Who gets to cut the razor wire or put it there? And this is all tied to the idea of ID, right? So as we're thinking about this world in which we want to live in, where obviously the old system isn't working, the paper ID is going more draconian, it is only going to cause more schisms in society. What does the new one look like? And how does it handle these issues of border control? Because really, that's what ID was. At the end of the day, it's meant to allow people to travel and have some sort of border control. Just the banking aspect of it is kind of an affectation, really, of modern I mean, so it's really, you have to
Mm.
take all these things into consideration as you're conceiving of the new, and it's no wonder that we haven't come up with a good standard for it. I like to say this. This is something that came out of a meeting that I had in like 2018 when we were trying to get a bunch of blockchain organizations together to come up with a new standard for ID. Like you get 15 philosophers in the room to ask them what is identity, and you're going to get 30 answers. How the hell are you going to get 15 politicians in the room to come up with a standard for identity, or 15 technologists in the room to come up with a standard for identity?
The answer to that, the real answer to that hypothetical is consolidate their source of funding to one party. If
There you
one
go.
entity is paying them all off, they will come to consensus.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, yeah. But in an increasingly balkanized world, that seems less and less likely.
Yeah. Well, let's hit on this last thing of useless regulation and stuff. For again, but I stutter. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission open meeting said to finalize new definition of dealer in the latest bid to boost resilience of the Treasury market. SEC rule would require prop traders to register with the SEC as a dealer if they primarily earn revenue from capturing bid-ask spread on securities from market-making incentives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the whole DeFi thing that we were hearing about. We were trying to make DeFi players basically register with the SEC if they have a certain amount.
Yes, and so I had like maybe a little bit of positive news for those of us that don't enjoy new regulations and federal guidelines. Is that there might be some big money people that push back on this and get this thing rolled back somehow, because this doesn't just affect us in DeFi, but it also affects a lot of large hedge funds of similar size and makeup of like things like BlackRock, and we all know how much gravity they pull into a room when it comes to SEC regulations. We've just witnessed the ETF's approval kind of as a result of them swinging themselves around. So, but for DeFi, this was an interesting. I was watching Gabriel Shapiro kind of live tweet, I guess, the proceedings, because he's a crypto lawyer. For those that don't know, Lex Punk is his Twitter handle, and it was mostly Hester Pierce kind of pushing back against the other commissioners in this discussion, saying that, look, this is an onerous regulation. We don't understand even how many people there are in the world, in the world of DeFi, that are trading on these things that you're going to call securities, even though we don't even all agree that they ought to be called securities. And now you're saying they all need to come in and register as prop traders, which is an onerous kind of OTC style licensing scheme that really doesn't apply. Who needs to register? Because there was a bunch of confusion and discussion talking about, does the AMM itself need to register? Does the liquidity provider need to register? Does the token issuer need to register? Who are we even talking about here? And the answer to all those questions was basically varying degrees of I don't know, or I don't understand, or, well, DeFi hasn't been compliant thus far, so we really can't answer that question. And Hester's like, yeah, you don't make it possible for them to be compliant. So how do you expect them to be compliant and come in and report? Come on, let's be serious here. And then I guess Gensler got tired of hearing it because he comes in and says, well, this really only applies for provision of liquidity, individual provision of liquidity above 50 million. Which,
so an individual whale.
Like you could almost watch, because again, I was watching this go across on Twitter in like kind of real time, and you could see like all the people that were degen traders kind of sitting on the edge of their seat going, oh God, is this the end of everything that we know? And then Gensler says 50 million, and everybody's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
So it's I don't have 50 million in any individual liquidity position, so I guess we're okay. But it does have implications for not the degen world, but like things that rise above, things that emerge out of like small projects that have like there are certainly individual liquidity holders on, say, something like Uniswap's token or Sushi's token or AAVE's token that have positions above 50 million that now are going to be required to register as a prop trader to do that. I mean, it is a very bizarre decision, and one that from what I understand, and this is Frank Kushner, he's the guy that does the traditional finance podcast in our network, says that there's a good possibility that there's going to be some pushback against, just because it's a very infuriating position if you are a hedge fund.
Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. It's funny because we're kind of entering this age of this area of rules that in practice apply to only certain people, and it's just like, for example, what percentage of the American population that actually earns an income of any sort files taxes? It's probably most, but not all. It's definitely not all. And I've known people who have fiat jobs and have bank accounts and stuff like that just haven't filed for, they just never started, or they just been 7 years and they haven't. And then, like, you know, obviously there's a lot of risk behind that. Let's be super clear in a lot of cases, but like, it's kind of thing where all these wild degen trader people are going to be doing their own thing no matter what. Some will be just better with their security, and it just, at some point when you want to get into some like actual legit fund, and then all of a sudden you have to hit that, you're just like, ah. And so we're hitting this point just like when we're having like, okay, all these chains competing over who can transmit Tether the best and maybe a Bitcoin representation the best. Same with jurisdictions coming up, where the U.S. 50 state system and, you know, Mexico 50 or 32 state system, and like, you know, all those were meant to have like a competitive effect of, you know, okay, we don't like this state, go to this one kind of thing. And it, in practice, it just didn't end up that way until recently, where now remote work, anyone can work from anywhere, and then you can have like real, like 100% real-time knowledge almost of any other place in the entire country. So you can just say like, hey, for just like a couple grand, I'm just going to move. And then there you go. Now the practice of free selection is there. So we're going to have that, I'm sure, with larger institutional traders and stuff. They're going to be like, this SEC thing is a nightmare. I'm going to incorporate in El Salvador, Argentina, in, you know, Switzerland, or wherever else you want to go. That's a lot. And then you're going to run that. And so the big money goes there. The not as big money can be anywhere, because they are legally under the regulations, but they don't practically fall under them. And so that'll be kind of interesting to see, because I don't think the SEC in particular, but also other regulatory bodies, but, you know, especially the SEC, is going to have the bandwidth to chase down anywhere near the number of little guys, you know. But
yeah, for sure.
But the bigger ones are going to migrate out of the regulatory space of this jurisdiction of the U.S. And hopefully it hurts enough wallets that enough people start complaining to their senators and stuff, and those people start complaining and things change. But decentralize all the things, right? Decentralize the global financial monopoly.
The problem with what I think I see happening here, and is what you said is absolutely correct. I'm not contradicting anything you said, but what the problem that I see is that it's a system that exists to preserve a status quo, in so much that they're writing themselves a blank check to not so that they can apply the law uniformly, but whenever they see a power, like a power or accumulation of capital start to emerge in one of these emerging markets that wouldn't normally be easy for them to say we have legal jurisdiction over, they now have given themselves legal jurisdiction to attack them. So as soon as they're trying to mow the lawn here when it comes to emerging markets. And I think why the where the problematic part comes in is that they've proven over and over again that you can't jurisdiction hop. In fact, Janet Yellen, in one of her recent fist in the air rants that she did at a press release was like Binance, CZ, and Justin Tron, these guys that have tried to jurisdiction hop, as she said, are no longer going to be, if they want to interact with the world of the United States, then they can't. And in that they mean if you want to touch anybody that is 2 or 3 degrees separated from the United States, they're going to count that as American jurisdiction, whether or not you're there or not. If you monitor the DOJ press release RSS feed, which I do, because you can find some interesting cases in there and some interesting kind of canaries in the coal mine, you'll find that they have a pretty good track record of coming after crypto adjacent people in many places that are not America, who have never even been to America, but because like somebody's second cousin was affected by something in the United States that was involved with whatever they were involved with, they're going to say, oh, well, it happened to an American. Yeah, I know you're in, Venezuela or Brazil or, Liechtenstein or some other place that isn't America, but we're still going to come after you. And they figure out some way to extradite them and get them in the United States to stand trial. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And it doesn't mean like it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Most people are going to be safe by using jurisdiction as a shelter. But if you get too big too fast, or if you fall under the eye of Sauron for any reason, it's not going to help you.
Mm-hmm. And that's the real like push-pull thing is how much does the U.S. financial system, the regulatory apparatus matter to the rest of the world? The answer throughout the second half of the 20th century and let's say the first quarter of the 21st century has been a lot. It matters more than almost anything. Mm-hmm. But, it's with the whole like BRICS thing rising and just other things like that eventually. And then Saudi Arabia is just like on fire with its crypto stuff and like, or not Saudi Arabia, Dubai and stuff. Yep. And so you have all that happening. Now, eventually just like, it's like the Bitcoin, not crypto thing. Now it's just like US, not rest of the world. But then eventually you start to get lopsided there, where now it's just like people who don't care. The
GDP of all the BRICS participant nations now exceeds the GDP of the United States.
Yes. Now, the BRICS GDP probably does not exceed the US plus the Western allies or whatever, like the NATO type.
No, not yet.
Not yet, but the fact that it's there, and then the U.S. allies they could flip, right? They could either become independent, they could join BRICS, they could, there's a lot of ways that these individuals, they're not the U.S., even though they're part of the cohort now. So they have, who knows where that shakes out. And then once you have that shift in certain directions, it doesn't take that much to shift where all of a sudden there's like the dominoes of like, I got to put all this bullshit over here for this much money. And then I have to do, not nearly as much for a lot less money. And then as soon as the money gets to a certain tipping point, all of a sudden it's just like the dominoes fall, where either you jump ship or you go have a realistic conversation. Just say, look, Mr. World Power person here, I'm losing out being your friend. I still want to be your friend though. So can you do these 5 things for me and then make it easier? Can we just not, can we not have this oppressive financial regime where, all my like shitcoin flipper companies that are under me are just terrified of going to prison and getting the CZ treatment, And it's just like, I think CZ clearly did some shady, sketchy kind of things, but I don't have knowledge of this, but I don't think he did anything wrong. Like, I don't think he did anything what I would call universally criminal, right? Well, I wouldn't.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Everybody in crypto that's been in it for a period as long as CZ or Brian Armstrong or myself have done some shady adjacent things, right? Because for a large chunk of Bitcoin's existence, the primary use case was for the dark web and for sex workers to stay alive, right? Which means you are adjacent to gray markets, dark markets, and no money is clean. right? Brian
Yeah.
Armstrong was an OTC dealer from Houston. You know, CZ comes out of that same world from his part of the world. So if you're in OTC, it does it as much. You can even say, I'm going to try to stay completely clean. I am evidence. I'm living proof of that. I tried to run an honest business, deal with above board people, and just work off the boards. And people will slip through the cracks. You will have done business with a criminal, whether you knew it or not. So absolutely, I believe that CZ has done some shady things, even if he had the best of intentions, because he's been in
Yeah.
crypto long enough that's impossible for him not to.
I would say in his case, he probably had the most neutral of intentions.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
just making money, doing business, taking money wherever it will, you know. Yeah. So the fact is, like, maybe CZ did play it too fast and loose just because of where crypto was at the time. But the modern version of CZ, you know, like Justin Sun, the weird stuff too. Like, there's a bunch of these people that did some weird things, but like, you know, Duquan, obviously, like that's not good stuff at all. Like, you know, Terra Luna and all that. But when you have like the modern day version wanting to do something, like, you should not have, like, the Tornado Cash developers should not have to be in fear of going to prison. And I don't think that, I mean, I want to like be trying to get preach to the choir and, you know, all this stuff. Like, obviously, yeah, we know kind of show we're on right now, but like, to be honest, like, there's a difference between Tornado Cash and Silk Road in that case, where I also think they all should be out of prison. But when you create a marketplace for goods that a lot of which are illegal, there's a little bit more of a case to be like, wow, we don't like this guy, versus just running a VC-funded, relative, like, legit, like, privacy protocol that's just out there and we can't touch. And we have on the front end tried to restrict access to certain, you know, sanctioned addresses and stuff, even though the back end contract still does whatever. If there's a jurisdiction where those people can't have to be scared, like, that's not competitive. And I think that when you have a Rising Bricks or rest of the world or whatever, there's going to be a pressure that just says, look, you can't be throwing people like that, and the modern day CZ cannot be afraid for their legal safety. Maybe if they need to sign some new forms or pay a fine or something, that's one thing. But like, the whole, you can't leave the country or you're in that's a hard stop. Money will not go there. Money will keep going to Dubai. Like, it's not going to go there as long as you do that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see that with a lot of the service. I mean, like, I can't think of a service that's launched that's got a centralized, like, DAOs are one thing, but like, there's a ton of services that have launched that are centralized that I'm sure you've seen it too. You're in New Hampshire, where it's just like, hey, you can't log on our site unless you use a VPN and lie about where you're from. The guy that runs used to run Paxful, Yusuf, he's got this new thing called Nunes, and it's a great, from everything I've seen, it's a great OTC exchange. Absolutely militaristic about not allowing Americans to join the service. Like, you go to the website, it's noones.com, I believe. You go to the website, try to log in.
Should be NOOUS, no US. Should call it. Just like, stay out of here.
Yeah. And I tried to, I say, hey, Yusuf, I'd love to have you. I mean, if you ever come through Dallas, man, come hang out in the studio. We'll do a podcast. He goes, yeah, I'm never coming to the United States ever again. Not going to happen. Not doing anything with the United States. It's happening.
It makes sense. Well, that's probably a good wrap up point. Shill-o'clock. If you look at the time already, wow.
Yep.
What do you got to shill on here?
I am a big fan of the studio that I'm currently in and working. I am enjoying working on the merge. So just check us out at youtube.com/@themergetv. And just follow me on Twitter, where I will bloviate and talk about the type of stories that we've talked about today on a regular basis. I am at RIZZN there.
Yeah, let me flip over the screen to there. The merge, or the Monero. I mean, it's kind of funny because like a lot of Monero services use almost the exact same M as the merge. But yeah, it's a cool show. I've usually it streams right when I'm scrambling to get this one ready, so I haven't watched a lot of it, but I have seen some of it, and it is, it's quite well produced, which is nice.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, on X, which is how I first heard about you, of course, was posting on there on X. I mean, Twitter, whatever. I'm going to start calling it X to be early adopter as usual. But at Rizzn, which is great that you have that like on lock, and there's a lot of actually Rizzn in other places, but
right, yeah.
Is what it is. All right, well, everyone, thanks for watching. Thanks, Mark, for being on. It's been a pleasure as always. Happy Friday, happy weekend. Don't forget your phone is spying on you. Taxation is theft, and start using crypto before it's too late. And yeah, screw the SEC. How about that? Good way to end this. Bye-bye, guys.